Andy, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's great to have you with us. Some people know you from Creation Fest. Some people remember when you came over to the Driftwood Cafe at Lyme Regis and did the Hidden in Plain Sight tour. But for those that don't know you, can you just introduce yourself, please?
I certainly can. My name is Andy Kind, and I am a preacher and a comedian. I started comedy 16 years ago next month, and have been lucky and blessed not to need a proper job since then. And a few years ago, I felt the Lord calling me into preaching, which is not something I would have wanted to do when I started off in comedy, but it is now what I love doing the most. So for those people who did see me at the Driftwood, which is still my favourite venue to perform at in the country.
Wow.
Amazing little venue. For those people who saw me there, they'll know that what I like to do is to use comedy as the vehicle to preach a gospel message. And I do that in different ways. But yeah, it's a bit weird talking about being on stage, preaching and doing comedy, because I obviously haven't done any of that since March. So I'm not totally convinced that it feels like I'm talking about another person who doesn't exist anymore. It's like talking about an ancestor who looked a bit like me.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to ask you about that actually, because we've got a friend who's a full-time musician, or was a full-time musician until about 9 months ago, and he hasn't hardly done well. He's probably writing music all the time, but he's not been able to get out there and perform and earn money for the last 9 months. So comedy is your thing. That involves going out and doing a lot of gigs. What have you done for the last 9 months? How's it been?
Well, I've been watching your Pilgrim's Progress videos, John, but I'm fortunate in that I'm also in church leadership. So I work 3 days a week for a church as the evangelist and one of the leaders, and do a lot of preaching. So I've done a preach pretty much every week online during lockdown, and I've been preaching for other churches as well. So that's been really nice to still get my face out there and to serve other churches, because actually putting together an online piece of content every week is just exhausting for people. So it's been nice to serve people in that way. So yeah, I haven't really done, apart from the odd online Zoom comedy gig, which don't really work anyway, I have done very little comedy. And I found it difficult to write comedy as well, because unless I can see the destination, I don't really make much progress. And right. Unless I can feel like there's some kind of purpose to it short term, then I struggle. So the idea of not knowing when I'll be back on stage has stopped me from really focusing on the comedy. So I've been preaching and working on that and trying to be more disciplined as a preacher, which has helped, because obviously when you're doing it online, you've got to condense stuff and you can't just go on for an hour, which is what I love to do. So I think there's definitely plus points, and that the Lord's been very good. I actually bizarrely haven't lost any money
wow
this year. So as in, my bank account is pretty much exactly what it was
it started at zero, it's still at zero.
Yeah, it was a zero and it's still a zero, and
we're doing all right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's amazing. What a great testimony that is, that the Lord's provided. I mean, because I naturally assumed that actually, because a lot of your time was spent doing comedy, that your income would have just sort of dropped off the charts somewhere.
Yeah, well, it did, but I've managed to pick up extra stuff elsewhere as a preacher. And again, my church, what was really nice, my church, Redeemer King in Chesterfield, gave me a pay rise at the start of lockdown. So that was really good. So, I've had to tighten the belt a little bit, and I've had to be frugal. And I think one of the tragic things is I realized that most of my money gets spent on coffee and service station food. So I saved a lot of money by just not being on the road. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. I wanted to ask, how you've yourself have survived lockdown. You're a comedian, you're upbeat, you're telling jokes, but has it been easy for you, or is it been sort of trickier times as well?
As a comedian generally, before
just as
lockdown.
A person,
yeah,
we hear about Tears of a Clown, don't you, for example?
Sure.
You as a comedian, you're upbeat, you're funny, but you're not on stage all the time. Most of your life is lived just like the rest of us. And
well, I think it's a good question. I think I've noticed lots of things about myself that you don't. And during lockdown, I think people have been opened to a level of self-disclosure that we maybe weren't expecting. You learn things about yourself. I realize that the adrenaline I get from being on stage is essentially my drug. So I've never taken drugs, but the chemical high I get from being on stage acts in exactly the same way as a drug. And so chemically, I've felt quite low at different, not mentally, I wouldn't talk about mental health suffering, but just chemically, because I'm not getting that adrenaline. If you think about, doing the tour, you're doing three gigs a week and you're traveling, and so your body never really drops too much in terms of its adrenaline. And you can make up for that with loads of cafetières anyway. So you're never really chemically low. You're always fairly highly strung or fully charged. And then to have that all drop, and even with the preaching, as I'm sure, well, maybe you agree, that there is no adrenaline involved in recording an online preach, because it's not, unless you're doing it live online, that's a bit different. But most of my talks have been pre-recorded a few days before. So it's just you in your room, you've got your notes, and you're just talking to the camera. There's no adrenaline there. There's no sense of validation. There's no affirmation. There's no feedback. And it's not simply that preachers need praise. We want praise, but what we do need is feedback, because you need to know that what you're doing is having an impact. So affirmation rather than praise. The Lord spoke to me through what you said, or whatever. And because we've all been starved of community, I think preachers have had a really tough time. I know I have, because you're operating in just in a bit of a wind tunnel, really. This cyclone of nothingness. You don't know whether what you're saying is very good. The first few weeks you perform online, you preach online, you get loads of people saying, "Oh, thanks for that. That was new and that was fresh," and then it just drops off. So you get very little feedback.
Yeah.
And you need feedback to navigate where you're going. And you also need community and fellowship to sustain you during those times. So I've lacked that, and that's been really tough. I don't miss all the traveling that I have to do when I'm on the road. I don't miss that at all. But I do really miss being on stage and communicating live, and I could do with that coming back.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it? It would be good.
Yeah.
And for all of us, I mean, we all like getting out to things like that. If it's not that, it's the cinema or theatre or something. Just to get out and get back to normal would be nice. Anyway, you talked about church. You're Redeemer King in Manchester or near Manchester?
Chesterfield. Yeah, Derbyshire, yeah.
Sorry, Derbyshire. Right. And you used to have Mr. Beachy on board. Is he still around, Carl Beach?
Yeah, Carl Beach is the senior pastor there, and I'm the evangelist. So yeah, it's a bit of a crazy setup, but I think they're grateful.
That's an awesome setup, isn't it? That's the dream team, isn't it? Really, I think.
Yeah.
But tell me about the church. How's it going?
It's going really well, actually. We have felt huge favour from the Lord, and we have seen more people come to faith during this year than in the previous two combined. And
Wow.
the first Alpha course we did, I think we've seen 7 people come to faith through Alpha. And it's the quality of the conversions which is interesting. And I think I don't know if this is true nationally, but it's certainly true for us. The people coming to faith are people who are having genuinely radical and dramatic conversions, massive turnarounds in their life. And I think so. We're not seeing middle class people who you would normally expect to see on Alpha become Christians. We're seeing real turnarounds in people's lives. People who were nowhere or have been on, drugs, or one of our guys fought in the Second Iraq War in the parachute regiment and had PTSD, and he's had a massive experience of Christ. And
wow,
it's just been really, really amazing to see. And I do think that this is a turning point for the UK church, and it needs to be. And I also think that not that I'm particularly political, but I do think that what's happening with America and the American church is impacting us negatively. But I think actually that what needs to happen is that the UK church needs to reform to be more like the Chinese church and less like the American church. Because you see all these scandals and these, political embroilments. And then you look at the Chinese church, who are constantly persecuted. And yet people become Christians the whole time. It's, massively growing. And I just think there's a positive shift towards a new form of gritty evangelism for the UK church. And that's what I want. So, I can deal with a bit of lockdown on a personal level,
right.
if once we come out of it, that the harvest is plentiful.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds exciting anyway. Through lockdown, I mean, to have people come to faith like that, and like you say, it's the quality of the conversion, and it's not your typical middle class people either, which I think is fantastic. I know that Mr. Beachy's got some ideas about micro churches and little house churches and things like that, and that's something I would love to find out more about. I think he said on Twitter for everyone to get into contact with him. He's interested. Yeah. But we see this as one of the ways forward here. Very much so, one of the ways forward, because we've got little villages outlying left, right, and centre where there is no gospel witness, there is no gospel presence, but there are the odd Christian living here and there. And we see that as a way to go forward. Yeah. So it's exciting times. And when you see the state of what's going on in America, and that has impacted us. Some of the things that people are watching online, on YouTube, the conspiracy theories and all that sort of thing really isn't helping Christianity at all in this country. And why they're so worried and concerned about America and their president when we've got our own things to look at here, I do not know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting times, very interesting times. So what does the future hold for you then?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that I want my entire life to be about bringing people to Jesus, and I'm probably best described as a performance apologist, really. And you've seen the show Hidden in Plain Sight is really an apologetics format, or the format is comedic, but the content in the last 30 minutes anyway is apologetics. And I want to do stuff that no one else is doing, and I think I am doing that, but I want to get better at that. And I suppose I'd like to be better known for doing that. But yeah, I think whether it's writing my next book, or performing online, or doing comedy, or preaching, or being out on the street sharing the gospel. I want to lead people to Jesus, and I think that it's been really good to be in church leadership for the last 2.5 years. I'm probably not a great fit for church leadership because I am quite self-centered, and I do like to focus on what I'm doing creatively, and that's difficult with pastoral issues, as you know. There's always somebody wanting to talk to you about something that you don't want to talk about. So I don't know that long term I will stay in a church leadership role. I'd like to stay in Chesterfield. I'd like to stay with Redeemer King because I love them. But yeah, I think probably I am better fitted to the ranger mentality. The wanderer who just wanders into places, preaches the gospel, has a cup of coffee, and then wanders out again. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I've just, all deals are off at the moment, aren't they? And until we know that this vaccine is going to work, and until we know when things are going to go back to some kind of normal, difficult to make any real plans. So yeah, just trying to get stuff done while I can, really.
So you said you were coming down before we started recording. You said you're coming down to Lyme Regis for a week early in the new year to write your book. Can we have a little heads up on what it's about, or have you not got that far yet?
Well, no, I have. Yeah, so it's actually just it's the written version of the Hidden in Plain Sight show that I want to. I wanted to turn it into a DVD. I haven't been able to do that this year. That is still the plan, but I also want to have a book of it. So yeah, I'm coming down to Lyme for a week, at least a week, maybe a bit longer. Early in 2021, and I will stay in the place that I stay. I can't remember what it's called now, but I've been there a couple of times.
And you know where it is anyway.
I know where it is, know how to get there. And yeah, I'll put my winter coat on and I'll walk along the Cobb, and I'll have massive chips and just have a lovely time. And it just gives me a chance to contain myself within a writing environment, knowing that no one's going to ring and all of that. But yeah, so that's exciting. Always nice to have a retreat to look forward to.
Absolutely. Well, Andy, I think we'll stop the recording part there, but thank you so much for joining us this evening. And just finally, one final question. This is going out to Christians, to church members. How can we pray for you?
I think you could just pray that and it's probably quite a common prayer that everyone is asking. I think I just feel quite emotionally drained after this year, and I do feel as though I'm running on fumes slightly emotionally. So I think I just think, yeah, that God's presence would restore my joy and my energy. That would be really good. And yeah, just for creative ideas going forward, creative strategy going forward in how best to, administer what it is that I'm trying to do. That would be wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, Andy. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you. And maybe we'll see you early next year. Maybe you can bring Hidden in Plain Sight back down this way at some stage as well.
Be great. Be great.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, John.
Anyway, thanks for that.
Thank you.